understand, you're close with Mark. I understand he personally asked you to be part of this. What happened?
Well, I mean, he knew my story, which was a very personal one, but I had been part of 2 immigration systems. So my family and I emigrated to Canada to escape a civil war. And I was raised in Canada. But then after I was educated there, I emigrated to the United States and have been able to build a really great, vibrant life here. And for me, it's just one that acknowledges the fact that the U.S. is an amazing place. It's a land of opportunity that I want to just make sure remains a vibrant part of the world ecosystem at large as we move forward.
It's obviously a very controversial issue, especially in the light of the Boston bombings, and the 2 suspects were immigrants from Russia. It's also a very personal situation for you. You're actually applying for U.S. citizenship. There's this question, where do we find a compromise?
Well, look, I think it all starts with the same thing, which is we need to have 2 things. One is very affirmative sort of border security so that we can protect our borders. And second is to empower law enforcement with the money and the tools so that it can account for everyone that's here. Why are they here? What purpose are they doing here? And then once you have that, then you can actually start to build a framework for the future. And our perspective, and mine personally, is we are at a very interesting point in time where the U.S. needs to make sure that it continues to attract the best and the brightest. Because as a person that now travels around the world, investing hundreds of millions of dollars around the world, what I can tell you is that we are not the same country we were even 15 years ago. The next great companies are not being built here right now. They're being built in China and India and Russia and Brazil. And there's no reason why that has to be.
It's interesting to see Mark particularly injecting himself into a very controversial conversation. He's also been more politically involved, recently had a fundraiser at his house for Chris Christie. Are we seeing a new grown-up Mark Zuckerberg here? What are we seeing?
I'm not sure if it's a new, more grown-up Zuck, but I think it's one that acknowledges his place in the world as someone who's a thought leader and can see different trends and can also sort of try to bridge disparate groups of people together around things that are important, like this, like education reform. And these are all things that I think are, should be non-controversial and commonsensical when you take it within the context of the United States' place in the world.
So, you were obviously head of growth at Facebook. I know you've been paying attention to Facebook Home, which just came out on Android. It's off to a bit of a slow start, a lot of competition. Talk about competition from Twitter and things like Snapchat. How good do you think Facebook Home is, and how much a part of the growth story is it going to be?
When I was part of building products there, the most interesting thing that I noticed was that the best products always started with the negative attribution. We would launch something like Newsfeed, people would be very upset. When my team launched Facebook Platform, people started by saying, oh, this is nonsensical, it doesn't matter. And then you look back 3 years from it, and what happens is an amazing set of behavioral trends are established that drives lock-in, that drives usage. When you individually ask people what they think about Facebook Home, they always start with the same perspective. I'm not so sure. And then 2 weeks later, wow, I find myself really addicted. And the reason is because it has nothing to do with Facebook. It has everything to do about your friends and your social circles and staying connected to individuals. And when you bring that up to the top of your phone, so that it's not about searching for apps or finding different random things, but just you and the people you care about, I think that's going to create this really interesting behavior change that'll take a year or 2 to play out.
If you were at Facebook right now, how worried would you be about Snapchat?
I personally, I probably am in the best position to opine on this, seeing as before Facebook I ran AIM and ICQ. These are ephemeral networks that are interesting features. They are not broad-based services. And so as a feature, is it interesting that you can have a text message or a picture go away after a few seconds? Sure. I think a lot of people can build it. What doesn't change, though, is the fact that unless you have everybody there that you care about, it's a marginal niche product.
Okay. Now, I also want to talk about what you're doing with social capital. You recently raised a new fund.
Yeah.
You are trying to make big, crazy bets that you hope will change the world. And one of the partnerships you've recently made is with the Mayo Clinic with a new app called Get Better. Tell me about it.
So the premise around Better is very simple. Like when you look at the Mayo Clinic, they are the last stand in healthcare, right? So whether you are a head of state, a president, an athlete, or just someone who's extremely sick, you go there because you know that they are the ultimate vanguard and standard bearer for medicine. And what I wanted to do was try to take the qualities that those guys represent and bake them into a service that the rest of us can also consume. And so if you've ever heard of concierge medicine or an executive health care program, what Better does is take all of that value backed by the Mayo Clinic and distill it into an app that's available to us 24/7 on your phone. So you could be midnight dealing with a sick child, or during the week dealing with a sick elderly parent, or just traveling and not feeling your best self and wondering what's wrong. Now you can use the expertise of Mayo to help solve those problems.